Okay, on to the next skip the line reaction, man, and this one is Lowkey terrorists. Oh god. Oh god. Is this gonna be another one? Another one? Okay, Frank. Okay, there's a skip a line reaction from Frank Warner. I think it's the second video of the 4-part that you want me to do. The message is for the squad. The second of 4 linked songs. Song starts by showing a clip from ObamaNation Part 1. Full. This video contains graphic images towards the end of the video. Okay, so I mean, I might have to put a filter over there. I don't have a filter for this particular setup right now. I've got to create one, but I'll do it post reaction if I have to. Let's see what we got. Let's rock and roll.
Kill a wog from the Middle East, you're a hero. Right. Don't kill a wog from the Middle East, you're a hero. Your country is causing screams that never reach your ear holes. America inflicted 1 million ground zeros.
Okay, that was from the other song. Okay, so he's seen as a terrorist.
So we must ask ourselves, what is the dictionary definition of terrorism? The systematic use of terror, especially as a means of coercion.
Can someone tell that to like Joe Biden? Or like the FBI or shit like that? They seem to be getting the definition for terror, or the definition for terrorism and many other words, right? They've somewhat decided that many words have got different meanings now, right? But they call their own citizens terrorists, domestic terrorists, right? So I'm not entirely sure what this word means anymore, right? To America at one point it meant something different, and now it means something different, but now it's in their country. Their own citizens are terrorists as well because they don't agree with their political position. So someone needs to tell this administration as to what the definition of terrorism.
Actually, as a means of coercion. But what is terror? According to the dictionary I hold in my hand, terror is violent or destructive acts, such as bombing, committed by groups in order to intimidate a population or government into granting their demands.
That may fall into a category that a lot of people would not like to admit. Yeah.
Or government into granting their demands. So what's a terrorist?
They calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is.
Hey.
When they put it on me, I tell them this.
Hey.
I'm all about peace and love.
I like this look,
They
man.
calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is. Insulting my intelligence. Oh, how these people judge.
It seems like the ragheads and packies are worrying your dad, but your dad's favourite food is curry and kebab. It's funny but it's sad how they make your mummy hurry with her bags, rather read the Sun and study all the facts. Tell me, what's the bigger threat to human society? BAE systems or homemade IEDs, remote control drones killing off human lives, or man with homemade bomb committing suicide?
And not only that, not only are those things made, right, but they're made with the backing of an extraordinary amount of money. Extraordinary amount of money. We're talking about trillions. Don't even talk about billions, right? When it comes to warfare, when it comes to war, and when it comes to military defense artillery and military defense weaponry and naval ships and planes, we are talking in the trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, right? All being held and controlled by the most powerful, the most greedy, right? The most ignorant political elite class that's ever existed. Do you know what I mean? Seriously, it's like giving a child a machine gun. it's ridiculous. That kind of weaponry in the hands of those kind of people, right, is far more dangerous than small militias here and there, in and around. Not that those militias aren't dangerous, yes, but if governments like this decide to completely decimate a country for its oil under the false pretenses of nuclear weapons, right? That's far more devastating because they actually have some real devastating power. Do you know what I mean?
You were terrified when you saw the towers fall. It's all terror, but some forms are more powerful. It seems nuts. How could there be such agony when more Israelis die from peanut allergies? It's like the definition didn't never exist. I guess it's all just dependent who your nemesis is. Irrelevant how eloquent the rhetoric peddler is. They're telling.
I don't know. That whole Israel-Palestine debacle is it's a tough one. It goes back a while. There's so many different narratives. There's so many different views. Some is based on theology. Some is based on territory. Some is based on just pure hatred. It's a very, very difficult thing to sort of get around. They'll call Israel, this apartheid state. But I've read a lot about it, and I must be honest, I can't particularly come to a definitive answer as to why this is actually happening and things like that. Because if you also look at Israel in terms of calling it an apartheid state, like Muslims and people who practice the Islamic faith are allowed to practice in Israel, right? They are free in Israel. There are no laws against, Islamic people or people of Muslim faith. They have their mosques and they allow their mosques, right? Where on the reverse of that, in Islamic countries, Israelis and the Jewish religion is not allowed, right? So if you actually, it's seen as terrible. It's like, we don't want you here. We don't want Jews here. Do you know what I mean? Where Israel is actually open to having Muslims and to having free and fair, open society. Where on the reverse of that, if you look at it critically, you don't get that on the reverse of that, right? There's a lot of anti-Semitism in those countries as well. Right, and again, whether we can have a whole debate and we can argue about who's at fault here, we're never going to come to a decisive conclusion because it's just going to go all the way back. And the Israelis will say this, and the Palestinians will say this, and the Iranians will say this. Right, it's a super complex story that, yes, I do think does get manipulated politically as well. But there's a lot there that I feel that it's not a one-sided game. And I think anybody who plays this as a one-sided game is very wrong and, has their own agendas in place. It's not a one-sided game. This is definitely both sides, that there are faults on either side. And to absolve one side of responsibility, whether it be the Israeli side or whether it be the Palestinian side or whether it be the Iranian side, to absolve one side of responsibility and say, no, it's all them, that's a complete, utter bullshit. You know what I mean? That I cannot and will not accept. And the only way to solve this situation is to take both points from both sides and try to sort of work a middle ground. That is how it is. Working with these kind of things, working with different cultures and different people who have different beliefs and different religions is a very difficult thing to do, and it's always been difficult. We've always had wars over this kind of thing, territories, beliefs, ideologies, and those kind of things. To try and manage that, like, the only way you're going to manage is to sort of come to a middle ground where it kind of, keeps the peace in a somewhat, because it can never always be truly amicable, but in a somewhat amicable, acceptable way. So yeah, it's a very, very contentious issue. I don't think it's a clear cut. Anybody that's going to tell you, oh no, it's clear cut, it's the Israelis' fault, is talking shit. And anybody who says, no, it's clear cut, it's the Palestinians' fault, is also talking shit. I think there's a lot to this. It's not just, oh yeah, just point the finger at that guy, and that's the narrative. It's a really complicated thing. Specifically in that region of the world.
This is irrelevant how eloquent the rhetoric peddler is. They're telling fibs now, tell us who the terrorist is.
They calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is. When they put it on me, I tell them this: I'm all about peace and love. They calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terror is. Insulting my intelligence. Oh, how these people judge.
If you're going to speak out on something, this is probably the right way to speak out. You want to speak out through your artistry. It's like they're calling me a terrorist. The message over here is very powerful. It's a great message, and I 100% agree with that. They're calling me a terrorist, but all I'm doing is speaking. I'm saying words. I'm just speaking out on things that I'm seeing. All right? Whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, at the end of the day, my message is that I'm all about peace and love. Right? I'm not one to back wars. Right, which is kind of weird in today's day and age. Like, we've kind of lost the peace activists. Where have they gone? Peace activists have disappeared. It feels like everyone's for war. You know what I mean? The moment you speak of like an off ramp and a negotiations, like no, ratchet it up to nuclear war. We gotta go all the way. You know what I mean? It's like, well, wait a sec. There's like, you're talking about countries that you know nothing of. At the end of the day, you probably wouldn't even be able to point out Ukraine on a map. You don't know anything about its history. You don't know anything about its people. You don't know anything about its regional disputes, right? On the border of Russia and Ukraine, you don't know anything about that. All you know is that the TV told you that this is the war that you need to concern yourself. Well, I mean, there's many other wars out there, right? There's the war in Sudan that's currently happening that the media is just being completely stum on at the moment because, whatever, don't care about that war. There's people dying there. Right? Why is the narrative not there? Why is people not putting Sudan flags in their bios? Right? It's because the media told you this one's important. The media said this is the war that you need to follow. This one's important because it involves another superpower that has nuclear weapons. Right? And it can only be taken from one perspective. It can't be taken from another perspective. Whether you agree or don't agree with the perspective, two things can be true at once. You can denounce the fact that a country is being invaded, but you can also talk about why and how, and you can go back and you can see like what sort of culminated to this point, right? What were the points culminate, but it's not. So what the media's trying to tell you, shut up, put the Ukrainian flag in your bio, and say what we tell you to say, parrot it, right? There's no doubt what's happening there is terrible. I've denounced it many times. I said in my previous video that Bush and Putin should share a jail cell. 100% they should. Do you know what I mean? But the fact that you're not allowed to talk about it, like you're not allowed to talk about it unless you share literally a very linear perspective on something, right? There's many wars around the world, man. Take your pick, man. There's plenty of wars around the fucking world. There's been wars in Armenia. There's been war in Serbia. There's been countless wars in Africa, right? Many people dying, famine, starvation, kids dying, right? Media ain't highlighting any of those. If we had to put the flags of every single country which is currently in conflict, you wouldn't have enough space in your bio, right? So, yeah. So, it's... I wonder where the peace, back in the 60s and 70s, there was this whole peace movement. It was like, okay, no, love, not war. That somehow flipped, where it's like, no, cool, war, man, war. Maybe we should talk about peace? Nah, fuck you, bigot, Putin stooge, puppet. Really? Did I say I agree with the war? I'm just saying maybe we should path an avenue to peace over here. We need to stop acting like juvenile children and politicians should be talking to the people that they don't like because they're fucking paid to do so, to resolve issues like this, and not take juvenile approaches of like turning the back and being like, well, I'm not talking to you. That's what I think we should be doing. That's what politicians are there to do. Like John F. Kennedy did with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We need leaders like that can actually solve issues. Anyway, moving on.
Take my intelligence. Oh, how these people judge.
Lumumba was democracy, Mossadegh was democracy, Allende was democracy, hypocrisy, it bothers me. Call you terrorists if you don't want to be a colony. Refuse to bow down to a policy of robbery. Is terrorism my
Okay, wait. Talking about colony, this is the crazy thing about colony. The colonization. Let's go into that. Just to piss off more people. Like we haven't pissed off people enough. Let's go into colonialization, right? Which was completely and utterly horrific, absolutely. But that's the way the world worked back then. You can't change that. You can't judge people. You can't judge people today by yesterday's standards. It's how it was. We lived in a world of conquering, and it was terrible. We learned from it. We progressed. Fine. But have we progressed? This is the crazy thing. Have we progressed? And the people who are the most against this, like we're talking about the guys who are super liberal, very far radical left, who hate America and hate the Europeans for their colonialization and imparting their will on other countries, and things like that. Well, they denounce you today. They hate their countries because we imparted our will on other people. We colonized and we did all of that thing. But yet we're okay to do ideological colonization, right? Yet when we have countries which are in the Muslim, predominantly the Muslim nations, which are which the whole LGBTQ ideology go against their religious standards, and they are steadfast in this. Those are the ones that have probably got the least tolerance. No, they do have the least tolerance on it, right? And Christianity has the most tolerance on it, right? But Christianity is being struck down, right? They're trying to destroy Christianity and the Bible. They're taking Bibles out of schools. They're trying to destroy religion in schools, right? So that the secular religion can sort of take its place. But they won't dare to do that in Muslim countries, because Muslim countries is like, this is our faith, these are our ideology, you don't have to agree with them, which means you don't have to be here and you don't have to practice the religion either. That's fine. We've got our standards at the end of the day, and that's the way it is. Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you feel it's tolerant or not tolerant, whether you feel it's right or not right, these are our standards. These are our religious standards. These are our cultural standards, and that's how they are, right? And the very same people who are anti-colonization and anti the imperial West imposing and imparting its will on other countries like they did in the past are the very same people that are saying, oh, how can we have a World Cup in Qatar with their human rights laws with LGBTQ story, and we want to push the rainbow flags there, and they're like, we don't want the rainbow flags there. We don't want it. We don't want the rainbow flags there. You know what I mean? And it's and they fight against that, and it's like, wait a second, that's ideological colonialism. You're engaging in the same thing you're against. There are people that they don't follow by that, and it's that mentality is shared by the majority of the population. The majority of the population is like, no, we don't want it, right? But we cannot accept that in the West. We cannot accept that our ideas and our ideologies cannot be taken by other people. We have to force it on people. You know what I mean? We're no longer in a live and let live society. We will cram this down your fucking throat, whether you like it or you don't like it. And if you don't, you're a bigot and you're a terrorist and you're a this and you're a that and you're a whatever else. You know what I mean? That's ideological colonialism. You are practicing the same exact thing that you purport to have been against. No one's saying is that you don't live. Do you, man? Do you? No one cares. No one cares? Everyone's accepted the gay agenda in the West, right? For years now. When people are like, okay, well, if you, I'm gay. Cool, man. Live your life. I don't care. I don't care what you do. I don't care what your sexual preferences are. And it's shared by the majority of people. I don't care. I don't care what your sexual preferences are. I'm gay and I'm a teacher. Cool, man. That's fine. Know what I mean? I don't care that you're gay and a teacher. Okay? I'm gay or trans and I'm a teacher, and now your child, right, has to be indoctrinated into this. Okay, step back. No. Okay, wait a second. This is my children you're talking about over here. Okay, this is my children. You do you, but you keep it on your side of the thing. I have my own views. I don't push them on you, right? I don't say that you need to live a certain way because I live a certain way. You can live however you want, but right? There's professionalism. My kids are there to study specific things, right? My kids are there to study maths, English, all that kind of thing. And that's where it ends. My worldview will get imparted on my children. You don't impart your worldview on my children. Those are my kids, right? So you will not try and colonize my child's mind into your ideology. That's not going to happen. Not a fucking chance is that going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing that happens in countries like these and says, no, like, listen, you do you. You got your Western progressivism. That's perfectly fine. We have no issues against, I've got no issues against gay people. I've got no issues against trans people. I've got no issues against people of any sort of creed, culture, and whatever they want to be. That's cool. But you be you, man. And you can affirm yourself at the end of the day. Right? And out of politeness and out of being courteous, if you ask me, like, listen, this is how I see myself and blah, 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 in a conversation, would it be okay if you refer to me as this? That's fine. And that's up to my discretion. And to sit there and be like, okay, cool, I'm not going to be an arsehole about it. Of course I'm not going to be an arsehole about it. But when you come to me and say, you will do this, you will change language, you will change reality, you will tell me that the sky is fucking green because I tell you the sky is green, and your children will follow that too. And that's where I step back and say, okay, no, keep your colonization to yourself, right? Keep your ideological colonization to yourself. I will fight that tooth and fucking nail, okay? We have no issues. I've had people on my channel, right, where I say this is not right. It's not right to be pushing this onto children. It's not right to be taking children to drag shows, and it's not right for children to be exposed to these kinks and these things. Children as small as 5 years old, and I've been called homophobe for that. Know what I mean? And I'm like, tolerance? Are you tolerant? Are we tolerant in the West over here? You want tolerance? You purport to want tolerance, but you will not engage in the very fucking notion of tolerance? That's who we've become. That's who we've become.
Bow down to a policy of robberies, terrorism, my lyrics. When more Vietnam vets killed themselves after the war than died in it, this is very basic. One nation in the world has over 1,000 military bases. They say it's religion, when clearly it isn't. It's not just Muslims that oppose your imperialism, it's who go chat.
I don't think they've got 1,000 military bases. I think the last, okay, whether we believe it or not, but I think the last reported was 780 military bases around the world, the United States.
When clearly it isn't. It's not just Muslims that oppose your imperialism. It's Hugo Chavez a Muslim? Nah, I didn't think so. Is Castro a Muslim? Nah, I didn't think so. It's like the definition didn't.
It's sad that this actually, is that because of the dumb things that the USA and its allies have done, like, purely for corporate interests and for interests of oil and resource, because the world is fought over resources and oil, and that's never something that's gonna happen. That's happened, it's happening, and it'll happen moving forward, right? You can't change the world. And you can't change human nature. That's always going to be. They're always going to fight over resources. We're going to fight over territory. That's always going to be the thing. But the one thing that you can give the USA, outside of them, yes, terrorizing countries like Iraq and stuff like that, is that there has been a semblance of safety and freedom around the world, in terms of trade and a system that operates and an ocean that can trade properly because the naval forces are there to ensure that trade doesn't get disrupted and stuff like this, and sure, for their own interest. But I'm saying you can't take all of that away from the United States at the end of the day. Yes, they've done some terrible things, but on the flip side of that as well, I do feel like, a lot of their presence specifically into like the maritime waters and things like that have ensured less conflict as opposed to more conflict. You know what I mean? Has ensured that the supply chain routes are always open. And so, again, it's like, yes, they've done terrible things, and I'll always be first to denounce them. But there are a lot of things that the US have achieved in their hegemony that has been, maybe arguably, but has been good for the world. Do you know what I mean? If I had to ask you now, like, who would you prefer as the world superpower? And there will always be a superpower of sort. For people to be, there should just be no superpowers. There will always be a superpower. This is just how humanity works. This is how the world works. We're never going to change that, right? I think there should be superpowers that just don't involve and put their noses in everybody else's business, sure, right? But if the USA is not a superpower, China will be. And if China is not a superpower, Russia will be. Someone will be a superpower, and somebody will impose their power onto people. It's just, that is how it is going to be. That's how humanity is. So I have to ask you, who would you prefer as the world superpower? Would you prefer, right now, the three big are the America by a land mile, China, and then Russia, right? And if I had to ask you a question, who would you prefer to run the world, right? America, China, or Russia? We all know China is run by a CCP, or communist party that is very unforgiving. And Russia, I wouldn't call Russia a Soviet-style country anymore. I think anybody who refers to them as a Soviet-style country is just being ridiculous. They're not. They're actually more capitalistic than they are socialistic or even communistic to a certain degree. There's a level of socialism in Russia, but they are more capitalistic. China as well, to a certain degree, not from a social sense, but from a business sense, have also become somewhat capitalistic, all about making money, essentially. I mean, that was their rise, was changing that system somewhat. But who, in terms of their human rights and social ideologies, right? Which superpower would be best suited to run the world that you'd feel more comfortable in? The enemy you know or the enemy you don't? I can't answer that question at the end of the day. I can't answer. For me, I would say of course the USA. Like, I would say the USA, right? Because it's the enemy I know, and I know that they've done terrible things, and I denounce them for the terrible things that they've done, right? But at the end of the day, I feel that their firstly, free market system, free speech, which is, I'm more terrified of what America can become or is becoming now than what they were, because there was a moral overlying sense of free speech, freedom, liberty. Every man is able to have a survivable sort of situation with opportunities and shit like that. Right? I mean, that you don't have the thumb of the state sitting on top of every single individual like they have in China. But I'd still say the USA, and I would say the USA in the sense of, like, I'd say I'd like them to continue to be the world superpower, but to keep their noses out of everybody else's business. And if that country wants to decimate itself, that's your problem. The USA should literally just be like, listen, we don't want to get involved, man. Like, these are your issues, man. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you can't have the cake and eat it. It's like, you can't have USA not being involved. It's like people don't want the USA being the world police anymore. So it's like, okay, I do think that if the USA isn't the world police anymore, the world will the world will go back into multiple different wars, right? Because, hey, man, your enemies will always be on the march, man. And if you think that that's not going to happen, that's what happens. It's happened since time immemorial, man. Right? Chaos is always going to ensue because some leader is going to feel that the guy next door to him belongs to him, man, and I'm going to take that, essentially. And you'll have a lot more of that if you don't have a superpower sort of governing all of that and being like, okay, you can't just do these things to a certain degree. But when that superpower becomes goes against its morality or its stated moralities and starts doing that kind of thing, then that's where you got to put your foot down and be like, you can't do this, man. You can't walk into a country like Iraq under the false pretenses of nuclear weapons and then decimate that country. Like, that's not being a responsible world superpower. Sorry, that's just being, So the military complex over there in terms of, like I said, how do you fix that? How do you make a better America for the world? Take money out of its politics. That's how you make America a better country for its world. Take money out of politics. Politicians in America go into politics to become wealthy. That's what they go into politics for. Not for the people and nothing like that. They go into politics to become fucking wealthy. So whether that's attainable, I don't know. A superpower like that can also be very dangerous for the world, which I kind of feel like we're getting close to there when, you have the free world leader censoring people and saying that certain people can't say things. And that needs to be managed and governed by politicians and the government. The government needs to tell social media what they can and cannot say. And then I'm like, okay, wait a second. Who's going to save America from America now? So, yeah. Anyway, carrying on. Oh, damn it. I actually clicked all the way back here. Let's just carry on.
When they put it on me, I tell them this. I'm all about peace and love. But they calling me a terrorist, like they don't know who the terrorist. Insulting my intelligence. Oh, how these people judge. You think that I don't know, but I know. You think that we don't know, but we know.
Was 7 terrorism, was now no third man terrorism. Diego Garcia was terrorism. I am conscious, the conscious were terrorism. Phosphorus that burns hands, that is terrorism. Erdogan and Stern gang, that was terrorism. What they did in Hiroshima was terrorism. What they did in Fallujah was terrorism. Mandela ANC, that was terrorism. Jerry Adams IRA, that was
Yeah, what they did in Hiroshima was terrorism. I mean, you can classify it as that, as dropping 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. You got to also take into account that they had only just developed those 2 nuclear weapons. And I don't think they actually really understood. I think they did understand to a certain degree, but the absolute devastation that it would cause, and I honestly do believe that because the Germans were trying to work on that as well, and I honestly believe that if whoever would have gotten that power and that weapon first would have used it, right? Obviously now we're going to be like, oh no, America used those kind of things. Yes, America used it and it was wrong for them to use it, but whoever would have attained the nuclear weapon first in war would have used the nuclear weapon. I can almost guarantee that. I mean, only after the fact, right, when everyone started getting nuclear weapons, did it like that became the deterrence. Essentially, like, well, if I use them, he'll use his, and that's where the deterrence came from. But the person who would have attained it first, whether it be the Germans or the Russians, would have used it first. Because the other country didn't have that capability and there was no threat of that same weapon being used on them at the end of the day. So I don't think that it's like, okay, I hear that often, like, oh, America's the only one to have dropped a nuclear weapon. Yeah, but think about the context over there. Context is important. They used it because they were the first to develop it, right? And they used it twice. And after that, they were like, oh, okay, this is a bit like, this is hectic. And then Russia followed suit in terms of developing nuclear weapons, and there you got your deterrence, because it was like, shit, well, if I use it, they can use it, essentially. And that's what's kept the world at sort of relative peace. I wouldn't say peace, but at relative peace, because of that nuclear deterrence at the end of the day. Not speaking of the amount of tests that the US carried out for those nuclear weapons and the people that they're affected on islands like Bikini Islands and things like that, which is obviously terrible and devastating, right? But also in that same exact period of time, Russia was doing the same. They were doing thousands of nuclear bomb tests as well in their own right. So, so I mean, yes, I agree that it is terrorism, but I also on that same point, I feel that any one of the powers back then that would have attained a nuclear weapon first would have used that nuclear weapon for their own purposes to try and win whatever they were seeking to win, right? Or to end whatever they were seeking to end. It just so happened that America got to the nuclear weapon first.
Mandela, ANC, that was terrorism. Jerry Adams, IRA, that was terrorism. Eric Prince, Blackwater was terrorism. Oklahoma, McVeigh, that was terrorism. Everyday USA, that is terrorism. Everyday UK, that is terrorism. Every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. Ahmed.
Infidel.
So you're a terrorist?
Yes, I am a terrorist.
What kind of terrorist?
A terrifying terrorist. Silence! I kill you!
Okay, so I think let's not go into the graphic images over there. If you want to see that for yourself, you can just click on the link down below. Look, again, the most important thing in stuff like this is discourse, right? I think that specifically in today's day and age, we're too emotional about things like that, and there's absolutely there is so much to talk about in this type of thing, and there's so much to think about in terms of how to change these systems, right? And these systems need to be changed. I 100% agree that these systems need to be changed because they all revolve around money, and they all they revolve around greed and special interests and a whole bunch of shit like that. But then there's also positive sides to the argument. There's negative sides to the argument. There's a lot over here. It's a very nuanced thing at the end of the day. And the last thing I want to sort of like make it feel like, or to purport, is that now the American people and things like that are just terrible and stuff like that, which they're absolutely not, right? It's their systems. It's got nothing to do with the people. I'll always talk about that. It's got nothing to do with the people, with the people in Palestine, the people in Israel, the people in America, the people in Russia, the people in China. Take the people out of it, and let's look at the political elite structures. That is who you should be attacking. Those are the ones that you should change. You should turn your eyes towards, because they want you to fight with your neighbor over this shit. They want you to hate each other, because for as long as you're hating everybody down here, you're not looking up there to the people that are actually causing all of this. That's the actual problem. So you should always turn your attentions to those people, because those are the people that are causing all of this fucking shit, right? Those are the people who are trying to push more racism, trying to push more bigotry, trying to push more. It's ridiculous. Those are the people that are trying to divide everybody under cultural lines, political lines, racial lines, that kind of thing, right? They don't want you to get along, because if you get along, right, and the water settles, And the moment you can see through the water, you'll see who's fault, who's to blame for this, right? Those are the people, those are the systems that should be taken down, 100%. So again, all of my comments, anything that I say is always directed at the political elite and never directed at the people themselves, right? And the people themselves should not be even put into the argument. In order to change the systems, you need to change the systems at the top. The people who are governing it all, the people who can control it all, the people who want you to comply with their notion of what they see America as, or what they see Russia as, or what they see China as, or what they see Israel as, or what they see Palestine as, right? It's their notions, it's not your notions at the end of the day. So, yeah, man. Anyway, these political songs, man, can get heavy, and we can agree to disagree on certain things, but it is what it is, man. I'll catch you on the next one.